Tell me when you're recording,
Go
and then I
ahead.
can. Okay. So today I'm not teaching you the three basic compositions. I'm teaching you the weird compositions so you can kind of know how can I run them because we know the basic compositions, which are poke, dive and brawl. Right? These are the three basic compositions. But then I'm going to teach you the weird ones. So we will start with double flex, which is a pretty standard composition. We will start we will do the support brawl tanks and the versus or support um versus main brawl tanks. So
What?
MBT versus support brawl tanks.
Are you talking about
We
like Zarya versus like Ryan?
Yeah,
Okay.
Zarya and Junker Queen versus Reinhardt, Orisa, and Ramatra.
Okay.
And then we will be going into the poke dive tanks and the traditional dive tanks
Uh-huh.
uh, versus that. And then afterward, we will be going into Roadhog compositions a little bit, and
We
then
could
some
skip that.
base Sigma. Well, we have to go into these real quick just to like, these will be simple. These will be simple overviews. Um, let's start with double flex. Double flex. The biggest thing about double flex is you have to understand you do not run a main support. What that means is you are not being more team oriented, you're being more solo oriented. And the reason why that works is because main support is the role that focuses on everyone, right?
Hmm.
Mercy, Lucio, Brig, Life, they're focused on I need to help you, 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 right? Um, Whereas flex support is I'm popping off. So what that means is, as your team, you need to play a lot more either conservative or a lot more pop off potential, and we're going for like solos. Does that make sense? Which is why on a Kiri is a good example of Kiri goes alone with the Tracer when normally this doesn't happen, right? And Ana goes kind of like more into a DPS role. Does that make sense? So like it's not played traditionally, and we'll do the same thing with other type compositions. So Bap Zen is a great example of a traditional double flex composition. Most of the time, what happens is the BAP and the Zen are focused on kind of solo potential, and the BAP can't. While he can take care of everyone at the same time, his primary goal is I need to get amplification matrix, and Zen I need to get trans, and they focus more on who can I solo like help, right? Like Zenyatta gives his orb to one of the DPS. Baptiste puts all his resources into the Sigma, right? And this is how double flexes work. So whenever you're making a double flex composition, understand where you're allocating your resources. So if I'm running, a good example is on a Zenyatta, what DPS should I run with this? Oh, that's a weird Z, but okay. So if I'm running on a Zen, what should I allocate? Well, Ana should probably be pocketing a tank that will stay next to her, as well as a tank that can probably like make sure to be on her LOS. So who are those usually? Well, traditionally not brawl tanks because they have to go. So normally some of the dive tanks. So the three
Diva.
that I'm thinking of are Diva, Winston, and Ball. Winston doesn't work that well with the Zenyatta, so probably not him. But Ball and Diva are decent choices because they can help like stay in the LOS of the Ana, right? And then the Zen, who are we helping him with? Well, he should help the Tracer, probably like another flanker as well, because he can't help someone who's not a flanker,
Yep.
right?
Genji.
So probably Tracer, Sombra, Genji, right? Things that can flank, so he can pocket them, right? Echo even. So when we're making a composition that is double flex, we want to run characters that can fit with it. Unlike a Lucio, a Brig, a Lifeweaver, and a Mercy, where we don't have that problem, right? For example, if we're running a Lucio comp, we can run picks like we can run kind of anything with this. This is more universal. Where if we're running it very specifically double flex, then it's specific, right? Um, and that goes into what I'm going to talk about a little bit later with Sigma as well. But we'll start with the other ones. So we'll talk about the two brawl camps. One is like a solo brawl tank category. This will be Rhine. This will be Rhine, Ram, and Ramatra. And then the other one will be a kind of support brawl, which there are two currently in the game, which is more Queen and Zarya. So the difference between the two camps is pretty simple. Ram, Orisa, Rhine can go and by themselves and get kills, right? You expect these tanks to W key by themselves and kind of read it, right? Especially on specific maps and with how Overwatch 2 works, right?
Hmm.
A good example is Reinhardt can sometimes just get a solo pin. Ram can sometimes just walk in the back line without the team and be fine. right? These tanks, while they do require resources, they don't require as much resources because what happens is the Rhine, all he needs to do is peek his BAP and he's fine, right? Or for the Ram, he just needs to peek his BAP. They require resources, but they can do things without like using those resources. Does that make sense? They can do something like, for example, Ryan can shatter without needing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the two support tanks, which do require certain things. But those are the three type of like just traditional. I can W key by myself. Queen, and so really quick, when you make these type of compositions with Rhine, Ram, and Orisa, you want to make sure you have something that can pocket them when they do make their decision, right? And B, something that can help them get out of their scary situation, right? So these are the three tanks that I would be like, this character, even though we shouldn't run him, is okay with them, right? Because these tanks they require resources, but not as much resources when they like make their play.
Mm-hmm.
Queen and Zarya are the two support brawl tanks, and what they require a lot more is they require to as Queen, I need to make sure that I can pocket my DPS with shout, right? Because if I give my DPS shout, like let's say Tracer, she's now a 200 health Tracer. That's like insane, right? That's like armor pack, right?
Yeah.
I can spell health. And the same goes with Zarya as well, where Zarya gives them 200 extra HP. So normally we want DPS characters that normally couldn't function. A good example of those would be Echo or Genji or Reaper, right? Normally we don't run these in traditional brawl compositions because, well, first of all, they want to dive more as well as they need to go in, and we need to invest resources into that, and these three brawl tanks can't do that. Zarya and Queen can. They can both give them resources, which allows them to kind of duo as a dive, quote unquote, composition, which is why you see these two run dive characters a lot more than these three. Um, for maps that these matter, right? If we're doing this strategy, we need a map that these three can operate in without investing resources. So a good example is Antarctica, because the map is not all across the map, right? It's in a specific spot of the map, right? So for running Brawl in very enclosed maps, these three are like really good. If we're running brawl maps that are a little bit more, you have to go to a certain place, Queen and Zarya are a little bit better at that. Because Queen, what this allows you to do is a map like Shambali, right, is very still tight quarters, but you need to get somewhere, right? You need to walk to places,
Mm-hmm.
which is why Junker Queen and Zarya are good on this map because, we can walk, but also I can invest resources and build while we go. These two are really good the longer the fight is. These ones are innate good value. These are just good baseline, right? They don't require anything, they just are good. While these ones, they need a little setup to be going, right? Because Zarya needs charge, Junker Queen needs bleed. That makes sense?
Yeah. Can I pause you for a second? My ADHD
Yeah.
is going crazy, and I just need to satisfy it.
Okay.
Could you do like a real fucky full like support the DPS comp where you're like Junker Queen and like Tracer Sojourn or like Tracer Genji or Tracer Echo, and then like
Let's
run like
do
Ana
okay.
Zen or
Echo.
even like Brig Zen?
You can do probably Briggs then more with that. I get what you're going with this theory. The only problem is that this would be better with a Zarya because your goal, right, is to just keep him up enough to get late value, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like with this composition, you're like, I want to get value late in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, first of all, your JQ is not going to get there. Secondly, your second problem is that you can't outlast them because Zarya and JQ outlast in different ways. JQ's goal is to outlast through sustain. Zarya's goal is to outlast through damage. So they're two opposite sides of the spectrum.
Okay.
So probably replace it with a Zarya, and the comp's okay. So you can run on a Zen with Zarya, and it's okay as well.
Okay.
But does that help satisfy your niche and why that works as well?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll do the like the main dive tanks and then the kind of the poke dive tanks. So main dive tanks pretty much include Doom, Sorry, that's Doom and Winston. Why are these main dive tanks? It's pretty simple. What they do, while they can poke for a little bit with their like fist and the zap gun, their goal is to go, right? Their goal is traditionally we can go. If you're on a map that requires you to walk on them while kind of brawling at the same time, and you need to dive towards them, that's where these two are really good. For example, a good example of this is on Junkertown Second. Junkertown Second is while it is kind of open, still Winston and Doomfist can walk onto them and brawl into them and force them to fight you, right? It's kind of like you're mixing a brawl tank and a dive tank together. So a lot of the time what we want to do is we want to both help them be able to dive by giving them resources such as like Ana or Kiriko where they pocket them, as well as make sure that they can actually go in and commit their duties and actually like kill stuff, right? Because these ones are traditionally more pop off in their nature, as well as the kind of goal is, Doomfist slams in, everyone dives in at the same target, right? Now, normally you would consider Ball to be in this area, but Ball is in a weird category right now with how Overwatch 2 is, so it can't work. Doomfist and Winston are really good on dive-centered kind of like push control maps that you can kind of pursue and keep pushing targets. They're kind of universal in that way. Whichever one you're better at is kind of what you play. And then the same goes for
So
Diva and Hamster.
would
Okay, go ahead.
would Doom be fine to run on like Kings Row?
Yeah, Doom would be fine on King's Row. Doom would be absolutely fine. You can even run on a Kiriko on that type of map. But then you do have to understand, while you do have more like pick off potential, you also lose the bubble, which is allows you to sustain through a lot of fights, right? So it's your
It's more
trade-off.
of an
Would you
all-in.
rather Yeah, it's more of an all-in style. Would you rather all in and have yourself have a lot of sustain, or would you rather kind of semi all in and then have a little bit more sustain? It's really up to you. Um, Kind of on what your team is going for as well. I will say this is harder normally, but it's possible.
Right.
The Diva. Oh, go ahead. The Diva and Ball, on the other hand, these two compositions are more on the slow, methodical grind of what poke is, or not, or poke and what dive is combined, right? So what they're doing is they're slowly creeping up, slowly pushing positions, and eventually they either isolate someone who makes a mistake, or what they do is they kind of wait for someone else to help them, right? A good example is Ball. Ball really can't push anything until they're discorded, right? Until they are discorded or hacked in some way, they can't do anything, or if someone makes a mistake, right? Unlike a Winston or a Doomfist who can push even on less mistakes just to make space, right? Where Ball's space is more of I exist, therefore fear me. Same with Diva, right? I exist, therefore you can't push my team because I will DM you for 4 seconds.
And to specify, when you're saying poke in this context, you don't mean poke damage. You mean poke like annoyance.
Like poke as in I shoot from range or I play on long sightline maps. Because they're denying angles at the end of the day. Because poke is all about angles. So it's not just about shooting someone, it's also denying them at the same time.
Right. Like
Diva
Diva
has
playing high ground.
Yeah, Diva playing high ground. That denies angles. Ball just being in your back line denies plenty of angles, right? The Widow has to constantly look, is the ball behind me? Right? Like this is just sketchy. Like knowing this is here. Like you can't play certain angles because just the ball and Diva existing. And you normally play these on dive maps where you can't get all the way there. For example, Winston and Doomfist cannot be played on Rialto. Why? Because the map is too long for them to
Yeah.
get there, right? Blizzard World is another great example, right? And that's where Ball and Diva come in as your options because Diva doesn't have to play that long sight because I can just DM in front of me, right? But Ball can play that sight line and just annoy them through shooting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where those two different variations come up, and that's why you don't normally see Winston on control or like Ball on control. Now, can you? Of course, but like that's why we normally don't because of how it plays. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Would you say that Ball is typically better on attack and Diva is typically better on defense?
Depends on the player. Because if you're a really bad Ball, then like this is better, right? It depends on the
Assuming
player.
assuming you're equally good at both.
Assuming you're equally good at both, yes and no. I think it is good in a vacuum, right? But let's say they're running a certain composition. Like if they're running like Brig, Bap, Sig, you're not getting through that as ball. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like you have to like run a diva or a Zarya by that point to try and break that, right? And so it depends on what comp they're running, obviously, but in a vacuum, yes, hamster equals good on attack and diva good on defense. But at the same time, you can make the other side work. Ball can work on defense, diva can work on attack because diva can DM snipers, right? From attack, and then ball can also like deny enemy hit scan from doing anything on defense. So it just depends on your flavor and what you like to and play styles. Remember how we talked about play styles?
Yeah.
That changes everything.
Yeah.
So, but in a vacuum, yes. And then after that, we have the two weird tanks. So Roadhog compositions normally consist of I give my Roadhog an ability to one shot through either Mercy or Zenyatta, and then I give them Kiriko to cleanse. Right? That's how Roadhog compositions work. It also usually has a hit scan. So just keep that in mind if you ever encounter someone running this type of composition.
Okay.
Because
Like
their
a
goal,
long range hit scan or mid range?
they usually run mid scans, such as ass or cat. Ash.
Wow.
Okay.
You
It's
try that
true, but
again.
no, it's fine. It's fine. But the reason why they also do this is because Hog's goal, even if he isn't pocketed, let's just say they're running the Lucio Kiriko, he wants to hook you so his team can kill you, right? So the goal is basically if Hog's here, his team is like here. This is his teammates,
You need
right?
that
And they're
instant
just
follow
ready
up
to
of his
shoot.
scan.
Yeah, that's it. That's the goal of the comp, right? So if you're the enemy team, all you do is you just wait,
Soldier too, yeah.
you just flank. You don't need to like play in his LOS because if you flank, then his team can't follow up.
Right.
And that's
Soldier
it.
too.
Yeah, Soldier too. Yeah.
Not Sojourn though.
Sojourn's okay because the Hog comp is a bit slow, so Sojourn works because she needs to farm up the charge, and if with Hog, it's okay.
Would that
So
specifically be with Mercy though if you're running Sojourn?
yes, it would
Like
specifically be the Mercy
you wouldn't run
variation.
Zen with Sojourn, right?
No, you would just run the Mercy deviation because what would happen is when Sojourn has rail, Mercy pockets this. When she doesn't have rail, she pockets the Hog, and that's it.
Okay.
So, make sense?
Yep.
Cool. So we don't need to talk about this character anymore. Let's just
Yay.
there we go. Is he deleted yet? Not quite. There we go. Okay. So Sigma. So Sigma compositions. Again, it's just about denying angles. Now there's two variations: the double flex and then the regular one, kind of. So Bat Brig is kind of like a regular poke because Brig denies angles herself by just having a shield, and then Bap also can shoot angles himself. Where the Bap Zen variation is more along shooting those angles, right, and just shooting at people, right? So significant compositions are just about angles, so just utilize angles. We've talked about angles before. It's the reason why Brigida BAP is not run with Widow Hanzo is pretty simple. If Brigida is in your composition, you need characters that can both poke as well as go in, because Brigida's armor packs shouldn't go to waste, right? So the
Genji.
only characters, so it's pretty much Genji. You could make an argument for Tracer if you wanted to, but Genji's kind of the best one that fits that category. Otherwise, like maybe a Torb, like you could try to argue, but or a Junk, because Junk does go in. He does W key. But yeah, that's about that for how that type of poke works versus this one. And then for making composition, it's pretty simple. What resources do these two need to do, or like the two supports need to do in order to not feed, right? If we're running a Junker Queen comp, if I run, let's just say like Lucio Bap, the Baptiste has too many resources, and therefore I need a DPS with like 300 HP, right? So there's only one of that in the game, which is Bastion, right?
You're talking about with Brawl?
Yeah, like I'm talking about a JQ Brawl. Like if I'm making a
Oh,
Jipka
okay.
Queen comp, right? And I need to run let's just say I want to run Lucio Bap, right? Well, the Baptiste with the JQ, Baptiste is spending too many resources into this because she already heals herself, right?
Mhm.
So what we should do instead is say, okay, I need a DPS that can I pump all my resources into, and Bastion's like perfect for that, right?
Gotcha.
So
What
like
about
it,
like Reaper or Torb?
Reaper or Torb would be fine as well, but like I'm saying, getting the most bang for your buck for Baptiste would be like Bastion,
Okay.
right? Because Reaper kind of self heals, so like you can make an argument, and then Torb doesn't, so like I'm okay with this one. This one's a check mark, but like Bastion is the most bang for your buck, right?
Gotcha.
But this is in case we're running Bap, Lucio, Junker Queen, which normally isn't the case, but when you're thinking of your composition, that's what I'm thinking of as well. Like when I pick compositions, right?
And you
When I think, oh, go ahead.
the reason why you want someone to pocket heals with on Pap is so you can build a window fast, right? Instead of
Yes.
just DPSing with them.
Yes, the goal with Flex and main support, right, is pretty simple. Flex needs to get their ult as fast as possible. Main support is more of that helpful role. So this is to help, right? And this is for ult, right? So when you make a composition with a main support and a flex support in it, you want two supports that can synergize as well as their goal can be fulfilled. If I'm running on a Brig, I need Ana to gain ult charge. If I have a Monkey, great, that's her ult charge battery, and then Brig can focus on DPS, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm running a Lucio Moira, right? Well, I need an ult battery. This can either be like a Brawl tank or a Winston, right? And so the Moira can get all her ult charge, and the Lucio can go in. I
Is
want to
that
run.
why Anna
Oh, go ahead.
Brig isn't great with like ball because she doesn't really have someone to pump heals into?
Yes, that's exactly why.
Okay.
Mercy Zen, right? With this composition, I need the Zenyatta to get all the ult charge, and how he gets ult charge is through pocketing a DPS, right? So then I would want a Tracer or a Sombra or maybe like but then Mercy also wants a pocket DPS, so I want some sort of hit scan with that. So maybe like an Ashe or a Sojourn, right? So something they can both pocket, and then I need a tank that won't die, basically.
So
So
ball,
that would be
maybe Civ,
like Ball,
Hog.
maybe Sigma, even Roadhog, right? Um, JQ and Diva need resources, so those two are no, right?
Could
Orissa's fine.
maybe run a
Orissa's
really
fine.
slow Ramatra.
Maybe run a really slow Ramattra, but you see, like this is what we're talking about, right? When I make
Yeah,
the composition.
yeah.
Like Lifeweaver, what does he do as a main support? Well, he's very helpful at making sure people stop feeding. So what DPS are best at just W keying? Well,
Reaper,
Reaper,
Genji,
Sojourn,
yeah,
Genji, Echo,
Echo.
Is really good at W keying, right? So these W key DPS, and then, but we don't want all, but that would mean he would spend all of his time on the DPS, which sometimes it's just, I want my Lifeweaver to help my tank player, right? So sometimes we just run Lifeweaver with like a Doomfist, and we run him with Ana. So like Ana can focus on the DPS a lot more, and then Lifeweaver can just help the tank and pocket him, right?
No,
No,
Lifeweaver outputs a lot of healing,
he does.
which is not common for a main support. Do you? Is it? It's
Brigida does a lot of
primarily.
bumping healing as
Yeah,
well.
that's fair. But
So
he's mainly not a main support because his damage is inconsistent.
no, it's because of ults. As Lifeweaver, so the
Okay,
goal of all
that's fair.
supports is obviously to farm ult, right? Like obviously all of you want ult at the end of the day, but which ultimate actually wins a fight? Does Tree win a fight?
It can.
No. I mean, it can, but we want consistency out of our ults, right? Baptiste is easily, this ult wins a fight. Ana, this ult easily wins a fight, right? Cole easily wins a fight. Kiriko easily wins a fight. And Trans is the only exception, but that's because he has Discord and he is special boy. Okay? He's the only weird one. But you get what I'm saying, right? The goal of these types of supports is to farm their ultimate, use it, and reset to the next one. Like they want to use it quickly. Like Zenyatta uses his ultimate as a reset tool so he doesn't die, right? Does Lucio use it in that way? No, he waits for his perfect opportunity. Same with Lifeweaver, same with Brigida, and same with Mercy. While Mercy might be a little bit more, you use it at the beginning of the fight, it's
Yeah.
still, we use it to basically in a certain scenario. Lucio, I use it if they use this, right?
Mhm.
Brigida, I use it if they use Blade. I want to stun the Blade, right? Lifeweaver, I use it to block off like a choke, right? Mercy, I use it when I use it more on to like help my team all go in at the same time, right?
Mhm.
But does these win a fight necessarily? Not all the time. Sometimes they will. But like these ults are used a lot more selfishly. Like Zenyatta, I use it to not die,
So just
right?
offensive power, basically.
basically. Offensive power, or I use it to not die, right? Like for example, Kiriko might use her ultimate just to TP out faster. Moira might just use it just to heal, right? They're a lot more selfish in their ability. And so now, can double flex or double main support work? Of course it can. But then the composition swaps, right? Like Brig Lucio, this composition means we're not banking on our ult, we're banking on these two ultimates, right? So in the original Jotes meta, they ran Brig Lucio, Genji with a
Sojourn. Sojourn
Sojourn.
or Tracer? I think it was Sojourn because she was still broken then.
Yeah, Sojourn was so broken in JQ. So what does this comp do? We have 3 ultimates that will win a fight by themselves, and then we have 2 ults that protect us, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal of the
Okay.
composition. You don't need support ults to win the fight because you have 3 broken DPS or like DPS and tank ult that can just go win. They don't need the support ultimates. And the same true is double flex. So BAP, Zenyatta. So this composition would have, let's just say Hanzo Widow, right? Normally. And then we have a Sigma Ma, right? So now what we have in this composition is we have 2 supports that I really want ultimates so we can kind of win fights, right? Because these 2 ultimates suck, and Sigma ult honestly kind of sucks too, right? Like it's not great, it's okay. Like if they use trans, then yay. But these 2 ultimates we kind of want to farm really fast so we can win fights, right?
Okay.
These are our win fights with ultimate button. So that's kind of what happens when we make a composition is when we run double flex, our goal is to kind of win fights off of them.
Okay.
If we run double main support, our goal is not to win fights off of our main support lineup, it's to use them to counteract abilities and use them at specific times, right? Yeah, that's kind of the simplest on how that works. And so that's why I usually run a main and flex support just to kind of even it out for most teams. When you go really high, then this becomes more null and void. It's the same reason why when I teach people DPS, I teach you 1 hit scan, 1 flex / projectile, because this is simpler, right? This is much simpler. You have 1 hit scan who can go ahead and fight like at range / like bully people with flanking, right? These are like hit scan picks normally, right? Kind of. And then you have 1 flex DPS, which is kind of like your utility. Oh,
Right.
Reaper's not utility. But does that make sense?
Yeah.
These are simpler, but how the game works in overall meta is too complicated. So at the end of the day, just stack auras.
Okay.
Baker's seal of approval.
So this is probably going to be too niche of a question, but
Okay.
would you typically build like your foundation of the team comp?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to be based on the map, or because typically the map is going to choose what tank you play? So then I feel like that would, so kind of like in a way the map's choosing your team comp, but in a way it's your tank also.
So you go map, and then you go tank, and then you go support, and then you go DPS.
Okay.
I'm kind of building it. The reason why is because the map first, and maps have multiple picks on them. Remember that. You don't always go the 1 tank on the 1 map. Even Watch Point, you can run D.Va on, right?
Yeah.
Like you run it based on what are good tanks for that map, and what do I want to achieve, and that's when you do the tank, right? So we'll do an example. Let's do a map like Havana. What are tanks we can run on Havana? There are 3. No, there's a lot of tanks you can run on Havana. What are some tanks you can run on Havana?
Ryan, Sigma,
Ryan,
Ramatra.
Sig, Ram.
Could probably run D.Va, Ball maybe.
Yeah.
And then depending on how bad the other team is, Zarya.
We're gonna not count Zarya because the map is too open for how she wants to play. So the reason why Ryan,
like if they're like not running snipers.
Yeah, so the reason why we run Ryan Ram is pretty simple. It is a sniper map, but also the map is very linear, right? You're going to the same place every time, right? So you can kind of like W key into them, and you don't need to worry about popping, like giving DPS support, right? You can kind of just go. And a lot of time you can like spawn hold them as well. So those two are understandable. Diva Ball also makes sense because it is, the poke-ish map. So we want the poke dive characters, right? So Ball and Diva can play long sidelines and still be okay, right? And then we have Sig, which is just, it is a poke map. So running the poke character is good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So after that, so now which tank would you pick? Just pick one. It doesn't matter. Let's say let's say you're on
attacker.
attack. Let's just
Okay,
say you're
on
on
attack.
attack. Let's just say you're on attack. You
Um,
see out of spawn, they're running a Rhine Brawl spawn choke. What do you run?
ball pharmacy.
Ball pharmacy. Okay, so you're going the ball comp. So now instead of picking DPS, we pick supports first.
Yep.
So ball, and we want our supports with this.
See, I feel like that's one situation where you would want to pick the DPS, or at least the Pharah first, because
So your thought process should be, we want to get around them, so we want to run a Mercy, and then you want to put the Pharah attached to her. You're thinking of Mercy first, right? Because Pharah doesn't work without her, right? So it's
that's
like,
fair.
no,
That's fair.
like that's why we don't care about our DPS players, okay? That's why we just say, run this, screw you. And like you can run Echo, right? You don't need to run just Pharah, you can run Echo because there's two solutions. But the only solution to you going around the enemy is two things. You can either go Mercy, or like for your main support, or you can go Brig, because the Brig can at least like stop them from pushing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those are your two solutions. You're wanting to go to Mercy, great. What's our flex support with that? So you have like 3 mainly.
Yeah, probably. I'd probably go Kiriko.
Kiriko, just to make sure you can get around them. That's why we're running the Kiri.
Yeah.
That's why you run this. You don't want to run this because it's better with Pharah, because Ana's way better with Pharah and Mercy, right? But you're running to run Kiri just so we can get around them. That's fine. That's what your thought process should be. If the thought process was we want to burst them with damage, kind of like with Mercy, then we want the Zen, right? If the thought process is, hey, I want to make sure that we can be stable in most mid fights, that's where Ana comes in, right? So Kiri, great. Just you want to get around them. Okay, DPS time. This should be pretty simple.
Wait, hold on. Wait. So
Hmm?
you say that Zen would be better with Pharah, but
No, I said Ana should be better. Would be better with Pharah.
what did you say?
Not Zen.
Oh, what did you
If
say?
I said
Zen
Zen,
would
I
be
didn't mean to.
okay.
I said Zen would be good if you're running damage. Like if your goal is to just DPS the crap out of them.
Okay. Because like when
So like
when I'm picking like ball pharmacy, my thought process is we're just gonna poke at them long enough to like they have to like if they're spawn holding and they're
so
on
then
attack.
so then if
Are
your goal is to poke at them, if that's your thought process, right?
basically live longer than they can.
Yeah, if your thought process is that, then Kiri's useless in this scenario.
Why?
Because the Kiri is terrible mid fight with this type of character, right? You're running Kiri for either A, we're gonna flank them a bunch, so my Kiri is gonna go with their tracer, or B, I'm running Kiri because really just focusing on the Suzu on the ball, right? That's your reasoning behind it, right? Because the Kiri is terrible mid fight in this type of composition because she can't Suzu anyone but herself, so she's just playing Suzu selfishly, and her goal is basically to get a pick on this Kunai when we could just Ana get a big nade and then Pharah gets a pick, right?
Well, so my thought process was you can use the Kiriko as basically give them someone to play cat and mouse with.
Yeah, so then you're thinking of we want to go all the way around them and then poke them. Not for a long period of time, we're just going around them, right? That's why you're running the Kiri, because she's cat and mouse with the Tracer. Because I'm guessing you're running Tracer, right? Or Sombra.
Um, probably Tracer. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're running Tracer Pharah, let's just say this is what you're running, right? The goal is obviously to have this be your cat and mouse. But if the goal is we want to do a late fight, right? Like we want this to go on until we kill something, right? Then Kiri is really bad at that. She's good if we're going around the enemy team. So like Havana first would be great for that. But if our goal is to outlast them and just keep on like peppering damage and stuff and like eventually whittle them down, Ana Zen are great at that. Even if the Rhine goes after the Zen and Ana, that's a distraction enough for your Pharah or your Tracer to get a kill, right? Because their Rhine has to spend his entire attention focused on one character, and then your Ball and Pharmacy and Tracer get a kill. So if the thought process is let's go around them, Kiri's great. If the thought process is let's kill them and whittle down their resources, Zen and Ana are great at that. You see how that works? Now, I'm not saying like we're perfect at that. Like I think that we're not that great at the Ana Farah, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that is the thought process most of the time on why you're running specific things.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the perfect composition is always not the best composition because
Right.
sometimes you have players who don't know how to play everything. A good example is Ryan, right? He can play Sigma and Winston and Ram. So in Havana, what are the only two comps he can play?
Sig and Ram.
Yeah. Right? So player bias is very important in this. And like RDG is not great on Ana when it comes to far compositions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's where I also come in and I'm like, okay, how would that work? Like, how can I help you stop throwing? Which
Okay.
we
So
always throw.
yeah, so maybe it's just my experience
Yes.
with the team because like when I'm thinking running Ana with Ball Pharmacy on attack
Mhm.
and we're getting spawn held by a brawl, to me that just sounds like the brawl just quickly runs at the Ana and she dies in 3 seconds.
Yes. And what the Ana should be doing is just sitting in spawn and really just kind of stalling their Rhine out, right? Because if the Rhine ever tries to go on her, great. That's great. She can just like sleep him or like just stand there. Like if he stands there in front of the Ana, what's his team dying to?
So
Right?
basically, she wants to wait until they get so bored of trying to shoot the Ana that's in spawn that they turn around to try and shoot someone else. Then Ana can either sleep or anti-nade someone.
Pretty
And then
much.
they try and re-divert their attention to the Ana and then they die. Yeah?
Yeah. And if even if they do try to dive the Ana, like let's say they all speed on her, well, a Ball, a Farah, and a Tracer can now all dive the Ana. Like you're diving your own target. It's a kill box. You just created a kill box. They're all in an
Okay.
area that's really bad.
So
So
it's less the Ana needs to survive and it's more the Ana's bait.
yes,
Okay.
the Ana is very much bait. And if they don't kill her, great. You have an Ana shooting in your backline. What are they gonna do? So while you are learning foreign concepts at the highest level that are really good, taking your team into consideration is always important when making composition, but not in scrims. In scrims you want to practice the perfect thing and teach them the perfect thing. Like for
Okay.
me, that's how I do it, right? You notice when I make you do a composition, is it what we're good at? Oh no, it's not even close, right? But that's what I force so I can see, okay, does this work? Like that, for example, whenever we do ball comps, you know how I always say, can we run Ana instead of Kiri? Right?
Yeah.
Because that's the perfect version of it. And then you're like, can we run Kiri? And then I'm like, I trust you, Demon. We'll run the Kiri. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can tell you want to go around them a bunch, and that's why you're running the Kiri.
It's just
So
more so that it feels like the Ana being by herself.
isolated. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, what I would do is if we were doing a kill box lesson, your Ana is now your kill box. So all you do is you be annoying. When your Ana says peel, everyone died, whatever on it, just killing. Right?
Yeah.
But that's a lesson for another day. I'm not expecting perfection, but what I am saying is this is how the game is meant to be played, and I hope this helps you make compositions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I hope this helps you when you're thinking about your comp. You know, it could look really bad on paper, but if it makes sense with the fundamentals, it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a main and a flex support that you're trying to farm like the correct things with? Well, you're running BAP and life, let's just say, right? As long as you have the fundamentals on how this would work with a tank, there's no tank currently in the game that currently can work with this pair, besides maybe like this one, maybe question mark. Anyway, but like you get what I'm saying. As long as you have the fundamentals, you can make a weird composition works because it of what it's trying to accomplish, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay, that is the